Good morning. My name is Sam. I am an alcoholic and I'm also a son of recovery. Let's start out with the serenity prayer. Good and gracious God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So I've taken a little bit of time off because I had a birthday and I also had my 5-year anniversary, sobriety anniversary. So I'm super excited about that. I'm just here to say that it is possible for anyone. And if you looked at my life over 5 years ago, I was a mess. I really was, and not everything's perfect still, but everything's a lot better. So, if you have any questions or thoughts about sobriety and getting through it, as always, please feel free to reach out to me because it is possible for you too. I know that. So, I'm reading through the 12 secular steps, and I believe I stopped in the 4th chapter. Yep, chapter 4. And I'm going into, the 4th chapter is the overview of secular recovery. So now I'm going into the phases of it. So, in phase 1, early abstinence, steps 1, 2, 3. The goals focus on stabilizing physical and safety needs. A period of medically supervised detox may be necessary. Keep the goal simple. Achieve the first 90 days of sobriety, clean time. This will break the ongoing cycle of active addiction. That is a scientifically and medically proven thought of 90 days really is the time when pretty much almost everybody, like everything's out of your system. You had a good detox. Put into action the essential tools and strategies to meet this goal. Please don't try to feel your way through this stage. Change the perspective from me to we. For this to be effective, the addict should establish and maintain honesty with themselves and with others, and establish a one-day-at-a-time mindset for recovery. Chapter 5 sufficiently details the tools and strategies for Phase 1, so we will continue with those in the next chapter. And I'll add to this point some advice to those people who are in their first months of recovery and remain unsure if they are truly an alcoholic or addict. Perhaps you can't imagine not ever drinking or using again, or you are still drawn to the excitement or thrill of a lifestyle that includes using and drinking. In short, you struggle with acceptance. Acceptance can sometimes mean the death of hope. When I accepted that I was an addict, the hope that I could ever control my drinking or using died. In my case, however, I came in broken. I was a mere fragment of a person, and I was fully aware that I was not using by choice. This is true for many of us who come into an older age, at an older age, and after decades of progression. Can a person get to acceptance at a much earlier point and with much less in the way of consequences and pain? Sure, I see it often. It still takes some pain and suffering, but it doesn't require hitting a bottom that completely crushes you. Suffering can take you part of the way, and reason can carry you the rest of the way. That's why intervention and inventories are such important tools. Interventions and inventories are such important tools. It takes some effort, but assessments create awareness, acceptance, and motivation. I love seeing young people get this recovery thing during what is probably the mid-phase of their addiction progression. It's nice to know they are spared the nasty years of their late phase. Self-knowledge may not be a sufficient condition for recovery, but neither is crushing defeat an inevitable one. Phase 2, personal reconstruction, steps 4 through 9. Frankly, many of us were seriously defective long before we encountered drugs and alcohol, and when we did encounter them, we found an instant solution to our stress, fear, and anxiety. Through our repeated use, we often stopped the growth and maturation that should have helped us learn how to resolve problems rather than escape into a high. Years or decades later, we awaken from the anesthetic and realize that we are truly screwed. What a mess. Well, there are also those among us who may have been very functional individuals when they started their drinking and using careers. They may have even appeared to be reasonably functional right up to the final days of their addiction, but they did reach a crisis point. They had degenerated into some defective patterns by then, just like the rest of us. At that point, it doesn't matter how we got to phase 1. And everyone is pretty much in the same boat until we get to the work of phase 2. Some people will reconstruct themselves quickly. Others may need to demolish the old house and construct a new one from scratch. The time and effort and the results will obviously vary. For some addicts, Phase 2 might be a 6-month refresher course, while for others it is nothing less than a revolution in character and personal values. Achieving a revolution like this might easily take 2, even 5 years. If we are successful in this phase, our old history and our old new way may seem like two separate lives. Abstinence is good, but abstinence and a change in personality is even better. At the heart of Phase 2 are inventories, diagnostics that produce awareness of the problems, and then we'll have the follow-up steps that put us to work on revamping ourselves in a focused, effective way. The key features of Phase 2: inventories and subsequent actions. Steps 4 through 5 are closely linked. Step 4 is traditionally called a moral inventory. I use that word in the adapted Step 4 because I've tried to keep the original language whenever possible. It is suggested in many guides that this inventory be structured in such a way as to reveal the defects of character that cause us to be dysfunctional in relationships and other areas of our life. We could potentially do much of the diagnostics on our own, but will benefit immensely if we get outside help. When it comes to our history, most of us in early recovery can use the help in separating fact from the fiction of perspective. That's the goal of Step 5. Steps 6 and 7 are linked. Once we build awareness of our defects in 4 and 5, we take action and become accountable to use principles and values to guide and motivate our future decisions and behavior. The Oxford Group, and subsequently the 12-step fellowships, attributed 3 primary defects of character that motivate dysfunctional behavior: dishonesty, fear, and selfishness. Of these, selfishness, the opposite of love, is the emperor of all defects. Steps 8 and 9 are linked. We work on improving and in some cases mending our relationships with others. Once again, accountability through amends in Step 9 becomes an important part of our actions. Cautions on Phase 2 inventories as we deal with the past. By way of expanding on the topic of inventory and confession in Steps 4, 5, and 8, I'll point out that we run the danger of spending too much time, effort, focus, and emotion in the past if we are not careful. Addicts are in a deep, scary, evil forest when they live in their pasts. As a sponsor, a trusted peer, I am not qualified to deal with all the beasts in that forest. I can share with you what worked for me, but I am not a therapist trained and licensed to diagnose and resolve long-standing psychological issues, nor am I trained or licensed to discuss medications prescribed by a physician to treat mental health or other issues. I'm also not a priest who can offer an absolution if your Step 5 confessions meet my standards. What I am is a fellow addict, a friend offering some suggestions I learned from my sponsor and friends. They worked for me. I now relay them, and some my history and my hope to you. Our goal in every step and all the phases is our sobriety today. In Phase 2 steps, we work together and discuss the past. In Phase 2 steps, we work together and discuss the past with an eye for catching self-centered patterns, counterproductive emotions, and resentments that are likely to get in your way if you don't work on neutralizing them today. Now, here's another consideration that will be put on very bad terms with Step 12 fundamentalists. Could we, for the most part, skip the inventories and analysis and go straight to the part where we take positive principles and values and make them part of who we are and how we live each day? Steps 6 and 7. Take a breath. The answer is yes, and I've seen this approach work, but it is not as good as working a true 12-step program, with 12 steps, including a 4th and 5th step. Defects of character identified in Steps 4 and 5 are serious, and they're a threat to your sobriety. The price for failing to adequately deal with them because of neglect or shortcuts can be quite high. I strongly urge you to take up a pen and paper and put some faith and work into Steps 4 and 5. I promise you will be grateful for the change that comes into your life as a result, and I completely affirm that as well. I believe in moderation in these steps. You may be tempted to avoid them because you mentally build them up to be something so large you fear you can't do it to your or someone else's satisfaction. But they're your steps. It's your work, and you have the power to keep them manageable. The right frame of mind is all that is needed, and that is also true. I was told right from the beginning, going through the steps is not a race. You're not racing anyone else. It's just you and only you. So there is no time frame that has to happen. All that has to happen is getting them done whenever that happens, so you can just chill out about it. When you do steps 4 and 5, I suggest you share your doubts and thoughts about your efforts on them with a few trusted friends. Discuss a few of your defects with them. You'll find most of your story is on common ground with the rest of us too. The AA and NA founders and other successful members were amazingly insightful in identifying common defects of character, as well as simple and surprisingly universal principles on how to deal with them. We'll discuss this in practical detail in Chapter 6. I'm just saying how much. Okay. My philosophy and advice for Phase 2 step work. I tell my sponsees, this is your program, your recovery, and the steps and program are tools that serve you, your sobriety, your contentment in life. These are the important reasons for doing this job. That doesn't mean you are always right about how to work the steps or program. You're a newcomer, and just like in Phase 1, a little humility and open-mindedness will go a long way in helping you succeed. If you're stubborn about how to do this program your way, in spite what experienced folks are advising, I think you're likely to screw things up, but that is your right. What I'm trying to say here is to use moderation, open-mindedness, and a sense of purpose when you work the steps of Phase 2. I'll repeat, sorry, it's a teaching technique and defect of my character that your number one purpose always is staying sober today. If you add to that, just be a decent person today, you have the gold standard of recovery. Sober today and living as a decent person each day, accomplish this and just about anything is possible. It takes a little practice, just like abstinence does, so we limit our efforts to one day at a time. Be patient with yourself in Phase 2. There's going to be a large learning curve. That reminds me, as you work through these steps, you should absolutely feel free to ask questions about them, about your progress, or about any contradictions you see in the plan. Sponsors should take it as a good sign if you ask why. When your plan makes sense to you, you build faith in it. When you have faith in your plan, you'll tend to work it more successfully. If someone is angered or frustrated with questions about how things work, then maybe they're not the expert they assert themselves to be. On the other hand, please proceed through your first months and years with enough humility to ask for help and advice as often as you need to, which is very often. Please have the willingness to listen and then judge. Phase 3, the steps of long-term sobriety. Phase 3 addresses vigilance, principles, and service in long-term sobriety. In Chapter 7, we will address this phase and discuss such issues as maintaining defenses against relapse and the use of a daily inventory to assure we continue our growth from Phase 2. We will also discuss long-term membership and participation in 12-step programs. I believe it is a misconception to think that AA or NA membership and participation must be lifelong. Hopefully, you choose to remain and give back through service rather than feel somehow pressured into it. But you can cross that bridge after you earn your way to it. And that is Chapter 4. Chapter 5 will be the first 90 days sober and steps 1, 2, and 3. So far, I'm really loving this book. I really love the way he talks. I think he's very encouraging. I think he's very realistic. And I really do think his address of the steps and how he has redone those is very usable. And so I can't wait to really discover more in depth in these next few chapters about the steps and how he looks at using them. So, I mean, it seems like it's going to be really similar to a regular 12-step program. So that'll be really cool. So, okay, here's a prayer. Teach me your will. Lord, take me from insanity. Show me the way to serenity. Remove my shortcomings. Guide me toward forgiveness. Remind me of my will. Teach me your will. God, I ask that you love me until I'm able to love myself. Believe in me as I learn to believe in you. Trust me until I can trust completely in you. Be with me now, just as you have been with me in the past. And with that, I will leave and say, please leave any comments, questions, or thoughts as always, and I hope you all have a blessed day.